All right, so are you ready to get into some really fascinating stuff today?
Always.
We're going to be talking about the Indian Constitution,
All right.
but not the basic stuff you know.
Right.
This is the stuff that you don't normally hear about.
Yeah.
You've sent in a ton of articles about some unique, special provisions for certain states in India.
Uh-huh.
And I'm already completely fascinated by this.
Yeah.
It's like each of these states has its own little set of constitutional superpowers.
I know, it is really fascinating.
It is.
What I think is so cool is that these provisions really reflect the diverse historical, cultural, and even geographical realities of India.
Totally.
You know, it's not a one-size-fits-all system.
Yeah.
And these articles show how the Constitution tries to accommodate that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to do today is try to unpack, what these special provisions are, why they exist,
Right.
and what they mean for those states.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, a lot of this stuff feels like it could be straight out of a political thriller.
Oh, yeah.
Backroom deals,
It totally does.
regional power struggles,
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit of mystery.
A little cloak and dagger.
So we're talking Articles 371 to 371J,
Yep.
which grant unique powers and considerations to 12 states.
Uh-huh.
So think of it like this. Each state gets its own little set of constitutional superpowers,
I like that.
tailored to its specific needs and its historical context.
I know, and they weren't just handed out. These
Yeah.
were added through amendments,
Yeah.
often as a result of really intense political negotiations or even social unrest.
Yeah.
So we're not just going to list the provision.
Right.
We're going to explore why they exist.
Exactly.
What were the historical forces at play?
Yeah.
What were the demands and anxieties that led to their inclusion?
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
The articles that you sent me cover states all over the map.
Yeah, all of
From Maharashtra and Gujarat in the west to Nagaland and Mizoram in the northeast. But instead of going state by state,
Right.
which could honestly get really repetitive,
Totally.
let's look at the big picture first.
Okay, sounds good.
What are the major themes that we see?
I think that's a smart approach.
Okay.
So we can group these special provisions into a few key themes.
Okay.
For example, several states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Karnataka have provisions focused on development and equity,
Right.
making sure that those regions don't get left behind.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
about making sure that certain regions don't get left behind in terms of economic progress,
Yeah.
access to opportunities.
Uh-huh.
So you see things like regional development boards being set up,
Right.
special funds being allocated,
Yes.
and even reservations in education and employment for people from specific areas.
And what's interesting is that this need for regional balance is an ongoing concern.
Totally.
Article 371-J, which applies to Karnataka,
Yeah.
was added just a few years ago in 2012. So it highlights how the Constitution is a living document,
Yeah.
constantly evolving to address the challenges of a rapidly changing India.
Okay, so we've got development and equity. What's another major theme?
Protecting indigenous cultures.
Oh, interesting.
This is particularly relevant in states like Nagaland and Mizoram,
Yeah.
where tribal communities have fought hard to preserve their customs,
Right.
laws, and land ownership.
Yeah.
Imagine for centuries, these communities lived according to their own traditions. Then suddenly they're part of a vast, diverse nation.
Yeah.
So these provisions act as a shield,
Yeah.
safeguarding their way of life, their
Yeah.
culture.
That makes sense.
It's about recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach simply wouldn't work
Of course not.
in a country as diverse as India.
Yeah.
So these provisions allow certain states to say, hey, we have a unique cultural landscape here,
Yeah.
and we need the autonomy to protect it.
I see.
And this autonomy goes pretty deep. For instance, in Nagaland, Article 371A gives the state significant control over matters
Okay.
related to Naga customary law, religious practices, and even land ownership.
Okay.
Acts of parliament can be overridden
Wow.
if they clash with these core aspects of Naga identity.
So we've got development, we've got these indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
What else jumps out at you?
Well, a few states,
Yeah.
particularly those in the Northeast, like Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh,
Mm-hmm.
have provisions dealing specifically with maintaining law and order.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because we start to see the shadows of history, the legacies of conflict
Yeah.
and insurgency.
I could already see why this would be a hot topic for the UPSC crowd.
Totally.
It's not just about memorizing the articles.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the historical
Context.
and political context shaped them.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have provisions related to representation and legislative power. Yeah.
States like Sikkim, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and Goa have special rules about the size of their legislative assemblies and their representation in parliament.
Yeah.
It's all about ensuring that these states, despite their smaller size or unique challenges, have a voice on the national stage.
So we've got these big themes about development, indigenous cultures, law and order, and representation.
Yeah.
I'm itching to dive into some specific examples.
Okay, let's do it.
To really understand how these provisions play out on the ground.
Right.
Where should we start?
Let's head to Nagaland. Article 371A, with its focus on protecting Naga customs and granting special powers to the governor. It's a fantastic case study in how India balances national unity with regional autonomy. It's also a great example of how understanding history is key to understanding the present.
Perfect. Let's unravel this Nagaland story.
Let's go. Okay, so Nagaland, imagine like a region with really dense jungles.
Fiercely independent tribes and like a history of just resisting outside control. For centuries, the Nagas lived according to their own customs, their own laws, their own social structures. Then, in the mid-20th century, as India gained independence, the question arose, how would this region with its distinct identity fit into the newly formed nation?
I can already see where this is going.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a simple matter of drawing lines on a map, was it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
There were anxieties on both sides. The Nagas feared losing their autonomy, their way of life. The Indian government, on the other hand, was concerned about maintaining unity and stability, especially in a sensitive border region. Remember, this was a time of immense change and uncertainty,
of course,
both within India and on the global stage.
So how did they navigate this delicate situation?
Enter Article 371A. Right. Article 371A, incorporated into the Constitution in 1962, was the outcome of years of negotiations and even armed conflict.
Wow.
It aimed to strike a balance to protect Naga culture and autonomy while ensuring Nagaland remained an integral part of India.
So what does this protection look like in practice?
Well,
what exactly does Article 371A do?
It's a multi-layered provision. First, it safeguards Naga customary law and procedure. This means that in many matters, particularly those related to civil and social issues, traditional Naga practices prevail over Indian common law.
Interesting.
Imagine a dispute over land ownership, inheritance, or even marriage. The resolution might be based on centuries-old Naga customs rather than modern legal codes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's almost like having two parallel legal systems operating within one state.
In a way, yes. And it goes further. Article 371A also protects Naga religious practices, ensuring the freedom to follow traditional beliefs and rituals. The Indian government cannot interfere in these matters, even if they clash with national policies.
So we've got legal and religious protection. What about land rights?
Yes.
I know it's a big issue for many indigenous communities.
You're absolutely right. Land is central to Naga identity and culture. And Article 371A recognizes this and places restrictions on the transfer of land from Naga ownership to non-Nagas.
Interesting.
This is designed to prevent the exploitation of Naga resources and protect their ancestral lands.
I imagine this provision has been crucial in preserving Naga cultural heritage and preventing the kind of displacement and dispossession that many indigenous communities have faced elsewhere.
Absolutely. And there's another crucial aspect of Article 371A, one that often gets overlooked.
What is that?
The special powers granted to the governor of Nagaland.
This is where things get really interesting. I remember in the articles, there was mention of the governor having almost unprecedented authority in certain matters.
Yes.
What's the story there?
Well, given the history of insurgency and unrest in Nagaland, the governor is given a much larger role in maintaining law and order compared to governors in other states. This includes the power to declare certain areas as disturbed areas, essentially zones where the military or paramilitary forces have greater authority to operate.
Wow. So the governor has the power to override even the elected state government in matters of security.
Yes.
That's a significant concentration of power.
It is, and it reflects the delicate balance that Article 371A tries to strike.
Yeah.
On one hand, it grants Nagaland significant autonomy.
Yeah.
On the other, it recognizes the need for a strong executive presence to maintain peace and stability, especially in a region with a history of armed conflict.
Well, yeah.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The governor's decisions in these matters are final. They can even override certain acts of parliament.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a level of autonomy that goes far beyond what most states in India enjoy.
Exactly. And within Nagaland itself, there's another layer of complexity.
Okay.
The Tunsang district.
Right.
Yeah, the Tunsang district.
Yeah, from what I remember, it's got its own mini-constitution within Article 371-A.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's a great example of how the Indian Constitution can adapt to even hyperlocal needs.
Wow.
And historical contexts.
Yeah.
The provisions for Tunsang incorporated when it was merged with Nagaland.
Okay.
Grant it a significant degree of self-governance.
Wow.
It has its own regional council, which wields considerable power over local affairs, including lawmaking, administration, and even resource management.
It's like a state within a state almost.
Yeah.
So we've got Nagaland with its special autonomy.
Yeah.
And then within Nagaland, we have Tunsang with even more localized self-governance. It's a fascinating example of how federalism can work in practice.
Yeah.
How power can be devolved to different levels to accommodate diverse needs and historical realities.
It's a testament to the flexibility.
Total.
And dare I say the ingenuity of the Indian Constitution.
Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time unpacking the intricacies of Article 371A and its impact on Nagaland.
Right.
I imagine for our listeners preparing for the UPSC exams, this level of detail is pure gold.
Absolutely.
But it's also incredibly relevant for anyone who wants to understand the complexities of India's political system.
For sure.
And the ongoing quest to balance unity with diversity.
Absolutely. And as fascinating as Nagaland's story is, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Of course.
Remember, there are 11 other states with their own unique special provisions.
Yeah.
Each one tells a different story, reflects a different set of historical forces and political negotiations.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
Let's shift gears completely.
Okay.
And head south to the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana.
Right.
Their story, revolving around Article 371D, is all about addressing regional disparity and ensuring equitable development.
Okay.
It's a different kind of challenge, a different set of historical circumstances, but equally important in understanding the tapestry of modern India.
All right, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana it is.
Let's go.
Let's dive in. Okay, so from the mountains of Nagaland, we're heading south to Andhra Pradesh and Telangana.
Yeah.
Now, these two states have a bit of a shared history, right?
Absolutely.
They were actually a single state until 2014, when Telangana was carved out of Andhra Pradesh.
Right.
And that separation was fueled in part by long-standing grievances about regional disparities and the feeling that certain regions weren't getting their fair share of development and opportunities.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing Article 371D comes into play here.
You got it.
This article originally applied to Andhra Pradesh and later extended to Telangana.
Yes.
Is all about addressing these regional imbalances.
Right.
And ensuring equitable development across different parts of the states.
Right.
So what exactly does it do? How does it try to level the playing field?
One key aspect is the establishment of local cadres in government jobs.
Okay.
This means that certain positions are reserved for people from specific regions within the state.
I see.
It's designed to prevent one region from dominating the civil service.
Okay.
And to ensure representation for all areas.
So if you're from a historically disadvantaged region, you might have a better chance of getting a government job in your local area because of this provision.
Exactly. And it's not just about government jobs.
Okay.
Article 371D also provides for reservations in educational institutions.
Oh, okay.
So students from certain regions might have a set number of seats reserved for them in universities and colleges, giving them a leg up in pursuing higher education.
It's interesting how this provision takes a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
It's not just about throwing money at a problem.
Right.
It's about creating mechanisms to ensure fair access to education and employment opportunities.
Exactly.
Which are the building blocks of social mobility.
Absolutely. And to handle any disputes or grievances related to these matters, Article 371D also mandates the setting up of an administrative tribunal.
Okay, now I remember reading about this in one of the articles.
Yeah.
It's basically a separate court system, right?
Exactly. It functions independently of the state high court.
Okay.
And specifically deals with issues related to public employment, education, and reservations under Article 371D.
I see.
This ensures that these sensitive matters are handled efficiently and impartially.
So it's like having a specialized court to address the unique challenges and complexities that arise from these special provisions.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating example of how the legal system adapts to the specific needs of different regions and contexts.
It really is. And for anyone interested in a career in the judiciary or law enforcement, understanding the nuances of these special tribunals is crucial.
Totally.
They're a prime example of the diversity and complexity of the Indian legal landscape.
Okay, so we've got Nagaland with its focus on autonomy and protecting indigenous culture, and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana with their emphasis on equitable development.
Right.
It seems like each state's special provision is tailored to its own unique set of historical and social circumstances.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of the Indian Constitution.
Yeah.
It's not a rigid one-size-fits-all document.
Of course not.
It recognizes the need for flexibility and adaptation to accommodate the incredible diversity of this nation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What should they be mulling over, especially if they're gearing up for the UPSC exam?
I think the most important thing is to see these special provisions not as isolated legal clauses, but as windows into the complex story of India.
I like that.
They reflect the ongoing negotiations between the central government and the states,
Yeah.
the struggles for regional autonomy, the efforts to protect minority rights, and the quest for a more equitable and inclusive society.
It's about understanding that unity doesn't mean uniformity.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing and respecting differences.
Yeah.
About finding ways to accommodate multiple identities and aspirations within a single nation.
Absolutely.
And that's a lesson that's relevant not just for aspiring civil servants, but for all citizens of this incredibly diverse and dynamic country.
Well said.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the mountains of Nagaland to the plains of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana.
Yeah.
Hopefully, our listeners have gained a deeper appreciation for the nuances of the Indian Constitution.
For sure.
And the fascinating stories that lie behind these special provisions.
Absolutely.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will spark a curiosity to learn more about the individual histories and cultures of these states.
I hope so.
Each with its own unique tapestry of challenges and triumphs.
Yeah.
There's always more to explore.
For sure.
More to understand about the incredible tapestry that is India.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.